What's going on, people? We are back. Little update from me. I was not planning on taking a break from videos, but obviously that did happen. I got COVID for Christmas. I was diagnosed with COVID on the 22nd, or I say diagnosed. One of the little tests that my girlfriend brings home from work. She works for the National Health Service, so we have a bunch of them in the house, and one of those confirmed I was positive for COVID on about the 22nd of December. So I spent Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, kind of lying in bed, feeling sorry for myself. Not really able to taste anything or enjoy Christmas dinner. Had like a really nice red wine on Christmas Day that I knew was a good red wine, and it just tasted of like vinegar / varnish remover or something like that. So the whole experience was not so fun. It wasn't terrible. I didn't really have a fever. I just had an annoying cough, and it's not still fully resolved. And just general lethargy, just feeling like extremely exhausted and wiped out, such that I didn't really feel like I could make any poker content and do it justice, or didn't really want to sit on this chair in my office and work. So that's why I took some time off, but we are back, and today I am basically recovered, and I want to talk to you about the resolutions that I have outlined for me for 2023. Some of these are poker resolutions, and the first one that we're going to get into in just a second with this lovely 200 zoom hand as an illustration is all about hand review. My first resolution for 2023 is to review one hand on every single workday. So that means review it thoroughly, properly, and in a way that has a very good protocol that's going to yield dividends long term for my game. I'm going to let you guys into a secret. I'm going to show you how to do this right now. So when we're reviewing a hand, it's really important that we avoid some of the biggest pitfalls of hand review. Seeking validation from a solver, from somebody else, just like, was this play okay? Should I have done X or Y? Seeking spoon feeding. Is this a fold? Is this river call okay? This kind of thing. Massive bugbear. We need to avoid all of that. So what do we do? With the don'ts out of the way, how should we review a hand? Well, I'll show you the spot that's actually in question here. First of all, we defend ace-jack offsuit in the big blind here at 200 zoom. Villain bets 1/3 on the flop. We're assuming they're betting range there. That's going to be a really common strategy. They bet a little bit under pot, about B80 or something like that. I think that is on the turn, B75, B80. Queen of clubs river comes, and they bet again. And we face this triple barrel. So this is the spot I wanted to review, is this river node. How do we do that? How do we get the most out of this? Because obviously the temptation is to be like, what should I do? Is it a call and why? Is it a fold and why? But we want to be thorough, and we want to be really quite scientific about this. So what I would say we do first, step one when we are reviewing a hand, is to ask an intelligent question. My intelligent question here is a theoretical one. I'm going to be studying GTO today, not GTO, but poker theory through the lens of GTO, just to explain the difference between those two things. GTO is the output that a solver gives you given the parameters that you plug in. And theory is the whys, the nuts and bolts, the sort of atoms, the molecules, the physics of the game, the reasoning, the sort of cohesive web of ideas that causes the GTO output to be what it is. So if you think about GTO as the answer to a math problem, game theory, poker theory, whatever you want to call it, is the mechanism to get to that answer. And that's what we're going to focus on in this kind of review. Pose an intelligent question. And the question is my hand a winning, break even, or losing call, theoretically speaking? That's the question I want to answer today. And once I've answered that and I've taken away some generalizable themes from answering that question, I'm going to be really happy. So step two is to explore the reasoning behind the answer. So when you look at the answer in the solver, you don't just want to stop and say, oh, look, it's a mandatory call, I have to call this spot, or oh no, I must fold this combo here, I'll remember that next time. Because guess what? You won't, unless you outline the theory behind the GTO, the working behind the answer. So we'll do that in just a second. We'll talk about what properties our hand would need to call here, what hands are losing, winning, break even, what kind of bluff catchers in our range are, what kind of EV, and basically trying to come up with some sort of, not precise formula, but some sort of process for actually deciding whether we have a good, bad, or indifferent bluff catcher. Bluff catcher being a hand that beats all of villain's bluffs and none of their value, which I think this hand is very squarely one of those. It's no way that our opponent is betting anything that ace-jack can beat for this sizing for value, at least not in game theory, and I also don't think that we are going to be losing to any bluffing hand. So this is a bluff catcher by the definition in the Carrot Poker School. Okay, so once we have come to a conclusion about whether this is winning, losing, or break even, answered our hypothetical question, after we have explained why that is the case, there's a third step, which is to derive a generalizable lesson, a moral of the story, something that we can take from this spot to another spot and say, now I'm better at bluff catching overall. Now I'm better understanding which factors affect whether my hand is a call or a fold in these facing river or triple barrel situations, and maybe even other situations too. So let's bring up a solver and I'll show you how we do this 3-step process. The first thing I did is I wanted my sim to make a lot of sense. I wanted the sim to actually reflect what I thought was going on in reality, at least parameter wise. So for instance, when you start off here in the normal world, the solver won't bet all of its range on the flop. It'll bet most of it, but not quite all of it. And because I think humans are just defaulting to betting everything here for a third mostly, the first thing I did is I went in here and I actually locked this button down here, which is force out of position bet. You can do this in Pio, really nifty feature of the software. Then the turn came and villain was never using B75 in the solver, right? It was only using overbet. And that's an issue, not so much for villain because you can simplify a strategy to not using overbet without significant EV loss. The problem isn't like, oh, he did something that's not a thing, he's misplayed, he's been a fishier, so the whole sim is defunct. It's not really like that. We just need to adapt the sim. So what I did was I went to tree and I said run subtree configuration. And then when I did that, that actually takes the starting ranges for the turn, puts them here. And what I did was I made sure that villain was only allowed to bet 75% of the pot, which is closer to the sizing they used in game. So now villain's betting range is only going to be for 75% pot. There are only two options, check or B75. Why is it checking so often? Just to explore that briefly, the reason is that when you've bet all of your range on the flop and been called, and the turn hasn't really connected that heavily with your bluff region or anything like that, you're going to be in a situation where you suffer from a range disadvantage. Your equity here is going to be lower than the in position player's equity, and the EV is going to be lower as well. So we can see here that the EV for out of position is only 46% of the pot. So we as the big blind are enjoying obviously more of that than they are. We have 53% of the pot in EV. Equity, a little bit less bad for the out of position player, about 49. We are still the favorite in equity, range versus range as well here. So they do a lot of checking. When they do bet, it's mostly going to be bluffs with something going for them. That's because their range is not in a favorable world. We talk about this a lot in Carrot Poker School Grade 2. You can check out our theory course over at carrotcorner.com, by the way. So we have hands like Queen 7 of clubs or spades, which are allowed to bet. And the only real hands here that are allowed to bluff that aren't flush draws is some kind of gutter. Something with a 5 in it, something with a 3 in it. Things like this. 5-3 is obviously a straight, but you've got bluffs like King 3 of hearts, King 3 of diamonds here as well. So I'd say that these are kind of the low EV bluffs. The flush draws are the higher EV bluffs, and then of course you just have the value range. Things like pocket 9s are actually meant to slow play a lot, as are aces, with their blocker properties to our calling range and unblocker properties to our bluffing range. Then we have hands like ace king, ace queen, ace jack, just doing a lot of the value denial betting here. So very normal stuff. Because villain is still entitled to value bet with ace 10, we have a hand that can actually beat value bets at this point. So when we look at our hand, we can see that we are going to be calling here all the time because the hand is not yet a bluff catcher. It's not yet a hand that solely beats bluffs, but it is going to move to that status on the river. When a queen of clubs, a wetting card comes, villain decides to bet 75% of the pot again. That's this sizing. It's in chips here in a 5-10 game, which is why it looks a little bit weird. And first thing we're going to do is look at the result for our hand. So our hand is basically always meant to mix between call and fold. Never meant to raise. We would consider raising as a bluff if we had a club blocker. As you can see there, when we have the ace of spades, jack of clubs, it's mixing in a bit of raise, but the hand is totally indifferent. So let's understand what's going on here. If we have a club, we can see the hand is no longer indifferent. And if I bring up the EV view here, you can actually see the ace of spades, jack of clubs has a call EV of about 2 big blinds, 20 chips. That's huge. You can see that at the bottom right of your screen, by the way. 20 chips, aka 2 big blinds, better than folding. So if we fold here with the jack of clubs positive blocker, we make a really big mistake. 2 big blinds is a lot of money in a fairly small to medium sized pot like this. If we call with this hand, we don't make any mistake at all, so our theoretical question has been answered. Most top pair is going to be a mix. Then we might ask, what are the hands we're always meant to fold? Well, these would be hands with less good blockers. If we have a hand here like the queen jack of spades, we can see that we actually lose over a big blind, 12.45 chips, by calling this hand, queen 10 of spades, queen jack of spades. Why? Why is this worse than ace jack? How can we get a useful heuristic from this that's going to provide way more utility than just saying, oh, the hand can mix, it's indifferent? Well, we have less good positive blockers. With the jack here, we have the same blocker as we do with ace jack, but we don't have the blocker to 2 pair. We can see that some of villain's value betting range here, if we go back, is going to be a hand like ace queen, So having an ace in our hand is going to block that combo. Also, ace 9, same thing with that. So having a more positive blocker is going to make a big difference here. Blocking flushes is huge. That's why we want to call with ace jack with a club. That makes our call positive. That's what we'd call a winning bluff catcher. We have break even hands, which is when we block some 2-pair and top pair, but we don't have the club blocker. And then we have a losing bluff catch whenever we have a hand that doesn't block any real 2-pair combos and doesn't block the flush. So you can basically see your bluff catchers here on a scale of having really positive blockers, having more neutral blockers, and then having negative blockers. Our hand is in the middle category. It doesn't matter whether we call or fold. What is the final part of this then? We've done the what and mixes, we've done the why because it has neutral blockers and we've acclimatized ourselves to see what that means on a scale we can understand. But thirdly, how do we take this nugget of information and apply it in some other spots? How about this? When you're on the river, start by asking yourself, do I have a bluff catcher or not? If the answer is yes, I have a hand that only beats bluffs, doesn't beat value, it's time to assess the grade of your bluff catcher, and we do this very fully and sort of academically in Carrot Poker School, grade 2. But the way to do it is to think, what are my positive blockers and what are my negative blockers? The wetter the card, the more important it's going to be to interact with the top of villain's range, because the top of villain's range is going to have more of a uniformity to its properties. So on a flush river, the top of villain's range is going to be flushes, and they will always have the common factor of club. Having a club in them, having 2 clubs in them, obviously with a flush, a blocker to a flush has 1, that's going to be the common factor. So on wet rivers, look to have very positive blockers for pure calling, for calling with profit in theory. Look to have neutral blockers when you're looking to identify your mixes, and look for negative blockers, blocking bluffs without really blocking many if any value combos at all, with a hand like Queen Jack or Queen 10. Sorry about my voice, by the way, it's still recovering, as I said, from COVID, so I'm kind of hoarse and not used to talking a lot. I'll drink some coffee, hopefully it will improve. Let's go back to the hand now and look at what I actually did. Hopefully that's been a useful exercise. This is how we properly review a hand. In game here, I really decided that my hand was super close. I decided to fold, and the reason for that was that I was very aware that I didn't have a club and that having a club would be really good. I also thought, and this might not be the case, but I thought it might be worse to have the Jack of Diamonds than it would be to have some other side card like the 7 of Diamonds. The reason for that is I figured that there were going to be more hands that were like offsuit hands containing the Jack of Diamonds and then 1 club the villain would want to bluff on the river. So I figured that humans in general here will bluff a hand like Jack 10 with the Jack of Clubs, King Jack with the King of Clubs, that sort of thing, Jack 10 with the 10 of Clubs, Jack 8 with the 8 of Clubs, hands like this more than they're going to bluff some kind of low 6-7 of Diamonds, something like that. That was my guess, so I figured this Jack of Diamonds was probably, in reality, against a humanly constructed bluffing range, one of the worst cards I could have, and so I decided just to fold. This spot, according to mass data, we talk about this a lot in Cash Injection, which is the new exploitative course that dropped in December there. This spot is generally overbluffed in pool across sort of average regs if it ran out a bit more cleanly. So blind versus blind on like a lot of innocuous runouts, like double Broadway, single Broadway, no Broadway, that kind of thing is quite overbluffed. But in this situation, with the flush completing in the Queen River, I don't think it's anywhere near as overbluffed. I think this is actually a spot where people are going to be much closer to a balanced frequency to start with, and so I don't sense a really strong exploit here like I would on a more blank card. So hopefully you enjoyed that thorough analysis. Let me talk a little bit more now about my New Year's resolutions for life. I have some poker ones today I want to discuss, and I have some life-oriented ones as well. So number 2 is my new diet. I am determined this year to get into the shape of my life. I've never said that before. I have said I want to get fit. Oh, I want to exercise. I'm going to hit the gym. I'm going to lift. I've said stuff like this before in January. The good news is I was working on a goal that we'll come to shortly, one of my other resolutions in December already. I've not just started this now in the 2nd of January. But yeah, one of my goals is to get into really good shape. And part of that is my new diet, which is going to be a ketone type diet where I'm looking to eliminate carbs for the most part, maybe not when it comes to like eating out or like special occasions or something. I'm going to be eating like a no carb diet. Got an air fryer for Christmas. These things are fucking amazing, guys. You like slam the steak in there, fry it up in like 9 minutes, and yeah, it's almost as good as like pan frying. Maybe not with steak, but with most foods, it's actually better. Like cooking veg in there, for example, like broccoli. Broccoli is actually enjoyable. Can you believe it? Who would have thought broccoli could be enjoyable? So yeah, the air fryer is going to help with this. I'm going to have a very high protein, just meat-based diet with some plants in there as well, avoiding things like fruits, sugars, carbs in general. And yeah, I'm going to miss it, but I think it's really going to help. It's going to be a really sure way to lose the pounds I want to lose in order to achieve the next goal, which is to do a full triathlon. I've already been training for this a bit. I've been getting my swimming game advanced a little bit, learning how to swim a bit better. I do a lot of cycling anyway, so the cycling part of it I'm not really worried about. The running part, this is going to be a bit tougher because I sometimes mess up my ankles by running, so I need to invest in some good shoes that are actually going to work for me and not break my feet. All advice welcome in the comments. But that is number 3. I am going to do a full triathlon this year. I'm going to start off with a sprint triathlon, which is basically half the distances for everything, and build up from there. I'm not far away from being able to do a sprint one, I think. I'll aim to do that by probably February, March, something like that, and then look to do a full triathlon by this summer or autumn. That is the plan. Okay, next resolution is my Twitch game. I am going to stream a minimum of 10 hours per week for you guys in 2023. That is a promise. Ill health or personal catastrophes aside, I am going to bring you content on my Twitch channel, varied content. Some of it's going to be coaching, a lot of it will be me playing, some of it will be real-time streams, studying with other coaches, other professional poker players, that kind of thing. So check that out on carrot_corner. That's my Twitch channel. Do drop it a follow if you haven't already. Before we get on to resolutions 5 and 6, I have 6 in total. I would like to show you another hand, and we will practice our hand review self-scrutiny process once more. So this hand is really cool. It's a really interesting one. We have pocket 4s here in the big blind. I'll just roll the footage here. I recorded this afternoon when I was playing 4 tables. So if it's a little bit blurry, that's why. Beside the donk bet on 5-6-3 rainbow, I think there are a subset of very low rainbow connected boards that really favor the big blind. I think people get this very wrong. Sometimes where they see a card that the big blind doesn't mind, or they picture the big blind hitting a pair of jacks on jack 6-4, and they say, oh, this board is great for the big blind, but really what tends to favor the big blind truly is multiple cards within what we call the danger zone in the Carrot Poker School, meaning in this case danger zone for under the gun, with a pre-flop razor, cards between a 3, 6, 5, 7, this kind of area, between a 3 and an 8 effectively. But the more of them that there are and the more connected that they are, the worse it will be for the pre-flop razor, the more it's going to neutralize their overpair and big card advantage. It's not just that we make the nuts a lot in this texture, it's also that many of our pairs have very high equity, more so than normal, because they also have straight draws to go along with them. So we decide to donk bet 4s here, which I'm sure is fine. Villain actually raises, exploitative considerations aside. This is the same villain as last time, by the way. And here I decide to obviously pure continue. The question is, how do I want to continue? I figured here that villain's raising range is a lot of overpair, some bluffs, and sets are going to exist. There's going to be 5s and 6s in there, but not very often. There are obviously no straights. We can have 7-4 suited and 4-2 suited, and villain can't. We can have all the sets, and villain can't have all of them. We can have 2 pair that villain can't have. So I figured probably I do want to play a lot of 3-bet here. I'm out of position against the raise, so if I do call here and check the next street, villain can check back and take us all the way to the river. So urgency is somewhat high because of that. I'm not sure 4s is the right hand to raise. If villain is never jamming, I'm sure I can raise this hand. If they're allowed to play some jams, then I might be reopening action here with a hand that's a little bit too good of a call, but one that probably doesn't want to call off a jam. Maybe in theory it can, but I doubt in practice it would ever want to. So I do go for a raise here, having rolled a very low number in the RNG. I'm not sure what I think about this now. I think I would rather have a hand 6-4, 5-4, 3-4, something that blocks the set. We did get jammed on. I decided to fold. I think this is just a spot that is super underbluffed. I don't think people are going to be finding requisite bluffs here, shoving something like ace-4 suited or something like that. I just don't think so, and we do block those. Anyway, the 4 is going to not block any straights, as I say. It's only really going to block bluffs, so I figured that despite the extra straight draw equity, I had to go ahead and fold there in reality against villain's true range. Yeah, let's see what the solver thinks. So again, before we get into the analysis, I want to pose an intelligent question. I then want to think about why the answer to the question is what it is, and then I want to find a generalizable nugget to take away from the spot. Let's do it. Here is the sim. I did not run this one to the accuracy that I normally would because the tree is fucking massive. When you include donk bets, the tree just gets completely out of control, but as you can see here, There's a very big incentive to include donk bets. They are a well-trodden path. I think you could simplify the range checking here without like a great EV loss, but I do like the whole unfamiliarity theorem, as we call it in the Carrot Poker School, where we take a line that people don't usually face in the hope that it's going to elicit a few more mistakes from our opponent. So pocket fours here, really standard lead. We want to lead this one at high frequency, around the same frequency as with range, actually, maybe even a bit more often, although frequencies alone aren't hugely important. One of the reasons we do want to raise so often here is that villain is kind of handcuffed. They don't have that many hands they want to raise. They can raise here, but it's something they don't really have to do very frequently, given that they have a big nut disadvantage. So I'd guess in reality people maybe raise a bit more than this, but overall, yeah, they're not meant to do much of it. That probably means that donk betting a really good made hand is actually better than it is in equilibrium, and bluff donk betting, yeah, might be better as well actually, because look how often they're meant to continue. The fact that ace jack off is a pure continue here is all the evidence I really need. The fact they're meant to call some king queen off combos, and king jack suited that's not even the backdoor. This is going to be a really overfolded spot. I didn't look at donk betting and cash injection. I did take 10 other really cool spots where I think there's a massive EV boost to be had to your win rate by doing something exploitative. If I could make an episode 11, I may well have made it on donk betting. This is a huge freebie, guys. Donk betting as a bluff is insanely good against your opponents. 25 NL, 50 NL, 100 NL. It's going to be super effective. People are overfolding dramatically. Look at the defense you need to reach in position here to protect yourselves against this line. So we donk bet and villain raises, and it turns out that we do have some 3-bets, so it's things like 6-4, as I kind of suspected. These like hybridy hands down here, things like 9-6, turning itself into a bluff. What you'll see here is that the hands that are happy to 3-bet, like 9-8, 9-6, etc., they don't actually have... Okay, 6-4 does have a ton of equity. That probably calls off against a jam though. Something like 4s is going to actually unblock sets, maybe not be able to call off against a jam, or at least its EV will be reduced massively. And then, you know, there is some jamming here, like jacks, queens, these hands that gain a lot of denial. There's a lot more jamming here than I actually thought. In my head, I thought I'm just never going to get jammed on here, like people won't want to do this, but it turns out they are meant to. So I think this is a mistake that I made. The trap I fell into was being a bit too lazy. I wasn't selective enough about my reasoning, and you can tell this because before I even simmed the hand, after I played it, I had a sinking feeling that my play was bad. And you have to be careful here, because sometimes when you get shoved on and villain makes you fold all of your equity, you can tell yourself that your play was bad. You can be like, oh, I'm such a fish. That hurt. I clearly shouldn't have done that to myself. You need to understand that that's just one iteration on the tree. That's not what happens every time. The reason I really felt this was bad is I don't block any sets. I just have the wrong blockers here, and as you can see, villain is going to be jamming 6s. I don't block that. They're going to be jamming queens and jacks. That means that a lot of my equity gets denied here when this happens. 4s just isn't a good enough hand. It wants to peel. The good news is that it's not a massive mistake. By 3-betting on this flop, I've only lost about 1/10 of a big blind. As you can see, there's about a 1-chip swing there, which is 1/10 of a big blind in this 5-10 model that I've input into File Solver. So while my play is not terrible, it is an inaccuracy rather than a blunder, and it's something we should avoid. Do we have reason to think that this is better than in reality? Well, I do think that people will sometimes level themselves into folding overpairs here. Tens is meant to fold a lot. I could see someone folding jacks here sometimes, just being like, do you know what, I don't fancy this. I could see the jamming being less than this as well. I'm gonna go ahead and say I think this play is actually fine in reality. Anyway, that aside, let's get back to the point here, which is what is the generalizable nugget? We've talked about the what, you're not meant to jam, you're not meant to 3-bet. We've talked about the why, because we don't block sets, we have a bit too much equity, we're in a danger zone of having our equity re-denied by jamming. What is the nugget that we take away and generalize to help us in some other situations? Here, I think the nugget is that when you are 3-betting a flop, you have to be very selective and meticulous about what your combo actually is. So basically, the bigger your investment and the more kind of repolarizing and crazy looking it is, the more selective, the more of a fine-toothed comb you really have to take to these spots. Okay, let me get back to another hand now. I'm just going to let the tape actually roll here on this pocket 7's hand so you can see my misfortune. But what I will say is that my 5th and 6th resolutions for this year, for 2023, are as follows. Resolution number 5 is to make contact with humans more. I have friends that I hardly ever see or don't keep in touch with very well, but not just that, just fellow humans on the street, in the gym, in the shop. just like connecting a bit more, trying to not live such a solitary kind of socially nihilistic life of staying inside your house and doing stuff online. I just think it's super unhealthy, and like without going on a massive moral, philosophical, political rant here, I think the world is moving way too much into a direction where people are just staying within their own little boxes, their own zones and parameters, only socializing under some very select cases, and just not getting out there, not making any contact with fellow unknown humans. So I aim to put that right this year. Look at us get stacked by the set of potatoes there. Pretty disgusting. I think the turn is definitely a spot we want to call again. I think the 7 of clubs is good here. It eats up some of the outs that villain could actually have with a flush draw, and the board is paired, so these pocket pairs can boat up on the river and become incredibly strong as well on the 7 river. Yeah, I think this is a phenomenal card to have. I think on paired boards, actually, the 7 of clubs is not so good, because if the 7 comes on the river, we actually want villain to make a flush, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, we run into this, and yeah, happy 2023, I guess. So yeah, that's number 5, is to make more contact with fellow humans. Just make more of an effort. Make eye contact, say hello to people. Just little things, you know, that I've got really bad at. I've just fallen into this habit of not doing it, and I think it makes us sad as a species. I think it really takes away from our enjoyment of life, and it's really against our genetic makeup and what we've evolved to do to thrive and keep us happy. Okay, finally, number 6, before we wrap up for today, more videos on the way very soon, and don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment on this one just to support the channel. Really appreciate it, so if you're enjoying the content, it's free. Do let me know that you like it. Number 6 is going to be a bit of a weird one, but this year I've decided to do the adult things. That means invest money sensibly, get the house done up, make shrewd decisions, spend time on things that matter instead of just recklessly and childishly flicking some buttons to get it done because I don't want to deal about it. Keeping a nice house, a nice working environment, making good choices, being responsible, mature, just generally being a good person, being an adult. That's what I really want to focus on this year. I've grown up a lot, I have to say, in the last like 5 or 10 years, but I think I can really take it to the next level now and just be more responsible, basically. That also means like not drinking way too much whiskey for no reason one night just for the hell of it. I've got better at that too, but yeah, that's included. Want to watch me get stacked one more time for good measure? And I will see you guys on another video very soon. I have a really cool idea for free content this year on YouTube. I also have an idea for more paid content. Check it out. Hurts a little bit less every time. Set over set, 3-bit pop. What are you going to do? See you next time. Bye for now, guys.